D'accord. Bonjour, bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour Carlo.
We can hear you. You have the same window as Ms. Gazibaro.
Yeah.
We live in
We are in
the
the same garden.
La même fenêtre.
We like green.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're going to
we did-
start, so they just need quiet for a couple minutes to start the feed. Bonjour, je suis la conseillère Jennifer McKelvey et je suis présidente du comité consultatif sur les affaires francophones de Toronto. La secrétaire du comité a confirmé que nous avons le quorum, alors je déclare ouverte la 7e réunion du comité consultatif des affaires francophones de Toronto. Bienvenue à tous. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. Members of the public can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live or by connecting to the WebEx meeting. We do not have any registered public speakers today. Because we are meeting remotely, we ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. The working language of this committee is French, so we have simultaneous interpretation available to us today. I know that among our members and our staff, we have varying degrees of fluency in French and in English, so I invite everyone to participate in the language in which they feel most comfortable. In this remote WebEx environment, we can access the interpretation by way of a dedicated phone number. Meeting participants will have received instructions on how to connect to the interpretation lines. If any members of the public would like to access the interpretation in real time, the details for connecting to the WebEx meeting and the numbers for the French and English lines are posted on the committee's webpage at www.toronto.ca/council. You will find them in the yellow annotation space at the top of the meeting container for today's meeting, where the French language materials for the meeting are posted. I would ask members of the public to keep their mics muted and their video turned off while observing the meeting. Observers may be removed at the discretion of the chair. The sound broadcast over YouTube will be the floor sound, whatever is said live in the meeting, therefore a mixture of English and French. Avec la permission du comité, le personnel du bureau de la secrétaire municipale rédigera les motions en anglais. Toutes les décisions du comité seront disponibles en français et en anglais lors de la publication de la procès-verbal. If members wish to place motions on any of the agenda items, please email the text of your motion in advance to the committee secretary at frenchac@toronto.ca. I would request that all staff keep their video turned off when they are not speaking or answering questions. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching the meeting to observe members as they participate in the debate and on each item during the votes. I also ask that members and staff keep their microphones muted unless you need to answer or speak to a question. If members wish to speak or ask questions, please make sure your video is on, raise your hand, or unmute your mic to indicate your intention to speak so I can create a speakers list. When voting, I ask members please ensure your video is on, raise your hand to indicate the vote. If there is a recorded vote, you will be asked to state if you are in favor or opposed. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, I would like for us to acknowledge the land we are meeting on. Nous reconnaissons que la terre sur laquelle nous nous réunissons est le territoire traditionnel de nombreuses nations, notamment les Mississauga du Credit, les Anishinaabe, les Chippewa, les Haudenosaunee et les Wendat, et abrite maintenant de nombreux peuples diversifiés des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis. Nous reconnaissons également que Toronto est couvert par le traité 13 avec les Mississauga du Credit. I will now call for declarations of interest. Est-ce qu'il y a des déclarations d'intérêt au titre de la loi sur les conflits d'intérêts municipaux? Si vous avez un intérêt, veuillez lever la main ou activer le microphone. When declaring an interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, members are also required to file a written declaration with the clerk. You can email your declarations to frenchac@toronto.ca. Seeing no declarations, puis-je avoir une motion d'adopter le procès-verbal du 8 juillet 2021? Y a-t-il un proposeur?
Oui, Serge Paul.
Monsieur Mayou, en contre? En faveur? En contre, motion adoptée. Nous avons 3 points à notre ordre du jour aujourd'hui. Commençons au premier point. FA 7.1, soutien aux Torontois francophones. Wayne Chu, le directeur bureau de la stratégie de réduction de la pauvreté, division du développement social, finances et administration, est avec nous pour faire une présentation au comité. Bienvenue, Monsieur Chu. S'il vous plaît, allez-y avec votre présentation. Mr. Chu, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Merci. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for having me today. My name is Wayne Chu, manager of the Poverty Reduction Strategy Office in the city's Social Development, Finance, and Administration Division. I am here today in response to a request to outline the supports that are available to French-speaking Torontonians that address women's issues, including poverty, safety, and the economic security of women, as well as supports available to French-speaking Torontonians to address discrimination experienced by the Francophone communities, including anti-Black racism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination against Francophones and members of the LGBTQ2S community. In today's presentation, I will be talking about the socioeconomic context that informs the work of the municipal government, key strategies that guide how the city delivers programs and supports for equity-deserving communities, and what the city is doing to ensure inclusion of residents. Tackling poverty is a core mandate of the city. Approximately 1 in 5 Toronto residents can be classified as low income, with a rate of poverty that is approximately 1.8 times the national average. When it comes to the Francophone population in Toronto, there are approximately 61,115 residents who were low income and had knowledge of French, according to the 2016 census. New data from the recently administered 2021 census will be available beginning next year. When you look at the communities that disproportionately experience poverty, we find that poverty in Toronto, as in other places, is increasingly gendered, racialized, and geographically concentrated. These include communities that have Francophone representation, including newcomers and Black Torontonians. So when the city considers how it delivers supportive community and social services, it is important, and staff are always considering, how programs and supports can be delivered equitably and in a way that acknowledges how intersectional identities can experience disproportionate barriers. Of course, the next question is, what supports and programs does the City of Toronto deliver to residents experiencing poverty and socioeconomic marginalization? The answer is quite a lot. As the largest municipality in Canada, with one of the most diverse populations in the world, the City of Toronto delivers many supportive services and programs across its divisions, agencies, and corporations. Last year, as part of the 2021 Poverty Reduction Strategy budget briefing note, we estimated that up to $3.7 billion gross, or 31% of the total planned gross expenditures in the 2020 operating budget, could be considered to be supporting residents living in poverty. It is important to note that services and programs for Toronto residents in need of social and economic supports are delivered by multiple partners. The City of Toronto, as a municipality, is involved in the delivery of these supports in different ways. A significant number of supports, such as social assistance, childcare fee subsidies, and housing supports, are delivered on behalf of the provincial and, in some cases, federal governments. These programs are mandated and are delivered in accordance within prescribed regulations. A second group of supports are within the mandate of the municipality, or the municipality plays the role of the system manager under which community partners deliver programs. Programs like community recreation, youth spaces and lounges, and low-income transit discounts are just some examples. And finally, a third group of supports are offered in community by community-based agencies and organizations. These organizations, many of whom you are likely familiar with, are a vital and important backbone that ensures that residents are supported where and in ways that make sense to them. The City of Toronto plays a role by funding many programs delivered by community partners, as well as playing a convening and facilitating role to ensure that the system is well coordinated. This includes neighborhood and community cluster planning tables. We do recognize that the complexity of this social support system can be overwhelming. That is also why City Council has adopted several key equity strategies that provide overall corporate direction on how the myriad of initiatives at the city can address systemic issues that are being experienced by our communities. For example, the Poverty Reduction Strategy, which is coordinated by my office, the Poverty Reduction Strategy Office, is the city's 20-year strategy to address immediate needs, create pathways to prosperity, and drive systemic change to reduce poverty in the city. To address anti-Black racism in Toronto, City Council adopted the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism, which is dedicated to making municipal services, spaces, and policies fully inclusive and accessible to Black Torontonians. This strategy is led by the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Office. The Toronto Newcomer Strategy, which is led by the Toronto Newcomer Office, seeks to improve newcomer settlement through leadership and collaboration between the city and community-based newcomer serving organizations. Recently, the SafeTO plan was adopted by Council, which is working to reimagine how we address community safety and well-being towards a culture of prevention. Other strategies of interest are the Gender Equity Strategy, which is currently in development, the Toronto Senior Strategy, which is in its second iteration and led by the Senior Services and Long-Term Care Division, has identified 27 actionable recommendations to address the growing needs of seniors in Toronto. The recently adopted Investing in Youth Outcomes report has defined a strategic approach for how the city can better deliver youth programs. And every year, the city engages in an equity-responsive budgeting process that assesses all changes to the city budget from an equity lens. All of these strategies were developed with substantial community engagement from communities that are most affected by these issues. On an ongoing basis, residents have a number of ways to engage in the decision-making at the city. At the council level, there are council advisory bodies, such as this one, which play an important role in raising issues and making recommendations to council. At the staff level, numerous offices incorporate program advisory bodies to guide policy and program development. For example, my office facilitates the Lived Experience Advisory Group, which consists of 20 residents with lived experience of poverty. Across the city, there are numerous community-based neighborhood planning tables, including those operating in neighborhood improvement areas and supported by city staff. And finally, the city is continuing to advance its practice of engagement to ensure that all of these initiatives are as inclusive and equitable as possible. Ultimately, all of this work is intended to ensure that we have an inclusive service and support system for Toronto residents. It is work that acknowledges intersectionality and equity. To ensure an inclusive and equitable service delivery system, many programs and services do offer supports in French. For example, some childcare centers offer programming in French. Toronto Shelter Standards urge providers to provide services in multiple languages, including French where appropriate. Designated social assistance offices in Toronto can provide French language services. Residents can also call 311 and get information in over 180 languages. Finally, many community-based organizations provide services in French, and users can search at www.211central.ca or by calling 211. Finally, if at any time a resident who is accessing a City of Toronto service or facility experiences an issue of discrimination, we encourage them to contact the Human Rights Office in confidence. This office will address these complaints under the city's Human Rights and Anti-Harassment and Discrimination Policy. You can contact the Human Rights Office at 416-392-8383, or by email at humanrights@toronto.ca. You can also submit a secure online complaint at toronto.ca. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide this high-level overview, and I hope it will be useful in your deliberations. I am happy to take your questions.
Merci, Monsieur Chu. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions pour le personnel au sujet de cet article? Okay. Seeing no... Oh, Madame Gazibaro, 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai deux commentaires, une question et un commentaire. Dans la présentation de M. Chu, dès le début, il donne les statistiques de 2016 et qui parle d'un nombre de 600 quelque chose qui sont à bas revenus, et il parle des personnes qui ont une connaissance du français. Je ne sais pas qu'est-ce que ça voudrait dire, des personnes ayant une connaissance du français. Est-ce que ce sont des francophones? Ce serait bien que ça soit très clair de savoir combien de francophones. On en a parlé déjà depuis le début de ce comité. On n'est pas encore arrivé à ça. Mais quand on parle des personnes qui ont une connaissance du français, ça ne veut pas dire des francophones nécessairement. J'aimerais qu'on clarifie ça. Ma question maintenant, j'ai beaucoup aimé la répartition de tous les aspects justement des services. Je reviens à la question de la stratégie d'équité en matière de développement social et économique, des finances et de l'administration. On en a parlé et on en a parlé tout au long. Mais j'aimerais savoir exactement, concrètement, quelle est cette stratégie d'équité, parce que je comprends qu'il nous a fait un résumé. Et j'aimerais savoir si dans cette stratégie, la ville de Toronto utilise l'analyse différenciée selon les genres pour justement parler de l'équité. Parce que si vous ne connaissez pas ce qu'est l'analyse différencier selon le genre, c'est un outil qui permet de regarder dans toute sa grandeur l'équité. Et peut-être la prochaine fois, nous aimerions avoir comment est-ce que la ville de Toronto applique cette analyse dans toutes les planifications et les répartitions des ressources. Merci.
Thank you for your question. So with regards to the first question, when making reference to a knowledge of French, I am referencing the question that is asked of Canadians in the census. And so they ask Canadians which of or both of the official languages in Canada you have knowledge of. And so the option set is English, French, or both. For the purpose of analysis, we tend to use knowledge of French as equivalent to Francophone, recognizing there is variability there, but that's how the question is structured in the national census. With regards to the second question, so I believe there was a question about how the city is undertaking a gender-based analysis to social programs at the city. As indicated, currently there is a gender equity strategy that is being developed by the recently created Gender Equity Unit, and certainly put all of you in touch with this unit. They are currently in the planning and development stages of this strategy, and they're beginning engagement with residents and communities on what should be in the strategy. Certainly how the city delivers programs and services in a much more equitable way from a gender lens is well within the scope of this strategy, and it might be something that this committee may consider asking for a presentation from my colleagues over at the Gender Equity Unit.
Monsieur Paul, 5 minutes.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, M. Chou, c'était très intéressant. Surtout la liste des services offerts en français dans la ville de Toronto. Moi, ma question, c'est de savoir si pour que ces services soient effectivement délivrés en français, est-ce qu'il y a une imputabilité de ces services-là pour bien signifier qu'effectivement, il y a les services en français qui sont donnés et que ce n'est pas que sur le papier?
Well, I certainly cannot speak for specific programs. Divisions are responsible for their own program delivery. What I can say is that when divisions undertake program planning and consider whether to deliver programs and services and supports in multiple languages other than English, including French. An assessment is done to see who the residents utilizing the service in that area are. The goal, of course, is to provide service in as effective way possible. But whether the degree, the service levels in multiple languages, that really is up to the specific division that is providing that service. As I also indicated, in some cases when programs are delivered under provincial mandate, for example, we do have to follow provincial guidelines, and there are provisions in legislation that require provincial service to be delivered in both languages.
Madame Léon, 5 minutes.
Oui, alors merci pour cette belle présentation également. Ce n'est pas une question précise que je vous pose, c'est plus, je suis en contact avec des francophones juifs qui se plaignent d'une montée de l'antisémitisme à Toronto et puis dans le monde entier d'ailleurs. Et au début, Monsieur Chou a bien parlé de toutes les formes de discrimination, mais dans le contenu du développement, je n'ai pas vu nécessairement de mention sur l'antisémitisme. J'aurais voulu savoir quelles sont les actions précises pour essayer d'empêcher ce genre de discrimination.
In answer to your question, in terms of specific programs related to anti-Semitism, I'm not personally aware of any that right now, but that's not to say that that does not exist. I think that would have to be something that we follow up, take back, and do a follow-up on. What I will say more broadly is that the City of Toronto does not tolerate anti-Semitism or discrimination of any kind in the delivery of its programs and services. And as discussed in my presentation, issues can be brought to the city's Human Rights Office to see what can be done to address any particular experiences. We do recognize that there is an increase in hate crimes and anti-Semitism in the city. When we think about equity inclusion, is also that many of our strategies and many of the approaches we take are recognize that communities do experience experiences with hate, and that is something that staff are very mindful of.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
Oui, j'ai eu une question. Euh, en fait, ouais,
Okay,
pardon,
Monsieur Charles, 5 minutes.
ouais, merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais continuer dans la même lignée que Marcel Léan sur la question des discriminations. Donc, je voulais savoir, donc j'ai lu un petit peu le PowerPoint que vous avez présenté sur les différents services qui sont offerts au Toronto 3. Donc, je voulais juste savoir par rapport à la sexualité pour la communauté LGBT francophone, par exemple, est-ce qu'il y a des stratégies qui sont mises en place? Si ça existe, est-ce qu'elles sont communiquées aux organisations francophones de Toronto? Voilà.
As I indicated in my presentation, I was giving sort of a high-level overview of the service delivery system. As I mentioned in a previous answer, specific inventory of programs delivered in French would be something that would have to be requested from each division at the city. Certainly that can be a request that can be made to divisions, but right now we do not have sort of a consolidated inventory of programs to easily answer that question at this time.
D'accord. Et j'ai aussi une autre question par rapport aux populations immigrantes de Toronto, les nouveaux immigrants francophones particulièrement qui arrivent dans la ville, qui ne sont pas forcément bien imbus des différents services qui sont offerts, surtout en matière de discrimination. Je pense aussi aux réfugiés, par exemple, qui arrivent et qui sont francophones et qui peuvent être, qui peuvent dans le passé avoir été victimes de discrimination, ou qui peuvent être en situation où ils sont discriminés. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a aussi des plans pour communiquer? Donc, je comprends que c'est un projet un peu global, mais je me dis, si on rentre un peu dans les détails, est-ce qu'il y a moyen ou est-ce que vous prévoyez justement de communiquer à ces différentes communautés différemment? Parce que du coup, évidemment, ce n'est pas le même langage que l'on utilise pour communiquer aux différentes communautés. Si on parle de l'antisémitisme, si on parle des questions d'équité et du rôle des femmes dans les orientations ou des discriminations faites aux femmes, pareil pour les communautés LGBT et les immigrants. Donc, je me demande, est-ce qu'au sein de ce comité qui travaille particulièrement sur ça, il y a en tout cas des projets pour détailler un peu plus ces questions de discrimination et pour avoir une communication un peu plus qui vise des communautés spécifiques avec un langage spécifique?
And that's a good question. So for newcomer supports, much of the supports available to newcomers are delivered by community-based organizations that deliver programs that are culturally relevant, that are responsive to the needs of the communities that rely on those various different agencies in neighborhoods. Coordinating all of this our Toronto local, trying to get the name right, local immigration partnership tables, and this is facilitated by the Toronto Newcomer Office. The city does have a Toronto Newcomer strategy that has as part of its objective to make sure that the specific needs of residents, newcomers who come to our city are addressed, and not in a global way, but in a responsive, specific way. A new newcomer strategy is currently being developed as well, and we'll be able to say more about that in the coming months.
Merci, je voulais juste, je sais pas, il me semble que j'ai encore un petit peu de temps, donc je voulais juste rebondir sur les services qui sont offerts aux différentes communautés, enfin aux différentes organisations qui travaillent pour l'installation des nouveaux immigrants plutôt. Donc c'est sûr que oui, la ville de Toronto, comme d'autres villes dans le pays, dans la région Ontario, bien sûr a un service francophone et il y a pas mal d'autres organisations francophones qui existent. Mais je me demande, pour des projets qui sont comme ça, des projets plutôt globaux au sein de la ville de Toronto, par exemple, des projets de lutte antidiscriminatoire, des projets de lutte antiraciste. Ce sont des projets qui visent l'ensemble de la communauté torontoise. Et le plus souvent, comme bien sûr, Toronto est considéré comme une ville anglophone, la plupart de ces projets sont présentés en anglais, la plupart des matériels sont disponibles en anglais, et ou même les présentations qui sont faites à travers, par exemple, sur YouTube ou d'autres plateformes sont quand même en anglais. Donc, je me dis, même s'il y a un service, la ville de Toronto a un service qui travaille directement avec les nouveaux arrivants. Donc, je me demande, est-ce qu'au sein de cette commission, vous avez, en tout cas comme projet, de spécifier ce genre de programmes globaux que vous avez pour ces différentes communautés de façon spécifique au-delà du travail qui est déjà fait par les différentes organisations. Et je m'arrête là. Plus de questions.
So if I understand the question correct, what I would say to that is, many of the programs and supports that are offered to communities and to residents are done in partnership. So the city does a lot, but I don't want to underplay the significant amount of support that community organizations, through funding from not just the municipality, but other orders and donations and all that, provide as well. So these organizations form the backbone of support for residents. And we try to do as much as we can to support and coordinate in our unique role in the community. All of these organizations try to provide us support in languages and in ways that are culturally and linguistically appropriate. As I indicated, if you go to 211central.ca and search for programs that are delivered in French, you can get an inventory of community-based organizations and where they are that can start to provide that information.
D'autres questions?
Il y a Monsieur YouTube, une question.
Madame Blonde?
Merci, Madame McKelvey, et bonjour à vous. Merci, Monsieur Chu. Moi, ma question étant une vice-présidente d'un collège francophone communautaire à Toronto, c'est la question de logement pour des étudiants internationaux qui arrivent de pays étrangers et les loyers sont soit pas disponibles, les logements, et surtout s'ils sont, ils ne sont pas abordables. Alors, dans les plus grands collèges, c'est évident qu'il y a beaucoup des collèges qui ont des résidences et qui peuvent appuyer. Alors, j'ai vu, M. Chu, dans votre présentation, merci pour ça, disons un poverty strategy, ou au moins un low housing ou des foyers. Mais est-ce qu'il y a une place où on pourrait avoir des renseignements? Est-ce que ça existe, ceci, pour aider non seulement les nouveaux arrivants, mais ici, en particulier des étudiants internationaux qui ont de la difficulté, qui vivent en pauvreté et qui ont de la difficulté à avoir des logements? Je serais intéressée de savoir si il y a un autre peut-être département de la ville de Toronto qui pourrait nous appuyer avec ce genre de renseignements. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, and to answer your question, I don't know how many colleagues from the Housing Secretariat office, but the city does have a housing strategy that takes sort of a full system view of how we can support residents who are in need of housing and how we can create more affordable housing in the city. In terms of where questions and where issues like this, in terms of international students, for example, where that can be directed is to that office, the Housing Secretariat.
Madame Girard, 5 minutes.
Torontois francophones. Oui, je m'excuse, je pense que j'étais sur mute, donc je recommence. Ce que j'allais dire, c'est que oui, merci pour la présentation, mais avec tout le respect que je vous dois, la présentation se nomme Soutien aux Torontois francophones et je crois que ça aurait été plus juste de la nommer Soutien aux Torontois, pardon, parce que c'est pas vraiment une présentation, c'est la présentation des soutiens qui existent aux Torontois, c'est pas axé vers les francophones parce qu'il n'y a pas de service en français dans la majorité des choses qui sont présentées. Puis c'est pas nécessairement un reproche. Je sais comment c'est compliqué de gérer les services en français parce que justement, on parle de plusieurs niveaux de gouvernement. On parle d'une municipalité qui est une énorme municipalité et ensuite, bien sûr, des ministères, des différents ministères qui travaillent tous eux-mêmes en silo. Donc, ça fait que c'est extrêmement compliqué de gérer et d'être capable d'avoir une structure formalisée autour des services en français. Puis l'autre problème aussi, c'est que je voyais comme vers la fin, une des slides qui dit on encourage les gens à offrir des services en français. Si vous encouragez les gens en services en français, ils n'offrent pas des services en français. Ça prend quelque chose d'un petit peu plus structuré. Et l'autre problème aussi, c'est quand il n'y a pas d'offre active, il n'y a pas de demande active parce que les gens ne savent même pas qu'ils peuvent demander le service en français parce qu'il n'y a aucun signe évident que ces services-là sont offerts en français. Donc, c'est dommage, c'est compliqué, mais malheureusement, je ne pense pas que les habitants de Toronto, et particulièrement, je dirais, ceux qui sont issus de l'immigration, mais aussi les gens qui ont des barrières additionnelles, comme la barrière additionnelle, bien sûr, de la langue, parce qu'on a beaucoup d'habitants à Toronto qui ne savent pas parler anglais ou savent très peu parler anglais. Et si on arrive d'un autre pays où les structures juridiques, de santé, de services sociaux, etc., sont complètement différents, et on arrive avec avec un mishmash, excusez-moi anglais, de services et d'organisations qui, des fois, offrent des services en français, des fois ne les offrent pas. Ça devient des barrières, ça devient des murs pour ces gens-là. Et malheureusement, c'est pour ça que souvent, les personnes qui sont déjà à risque deviennent finalement extrêmement sont dans de très mauvaises postures. Donc, il n'y a pas de solution facile. Puis comme je disais, ce n'est pas nécessairement un blâme, c'est plus une constatation. Mais en même temps, je me dis qu'il faut certainement être capable de faire mieux que cela pour la communauté francophone, surtout dans une grande ville comme une métropole comme Toronto. Alors, je n'ai pas de questions, c'est juste un commentaire. Merci.
Merci, Madame Girard. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Monsieur Calico?
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente. Merci Monsieur le conférencier. En fait, il y a Madame Girard qui a répondu à une partie de ma question, donc je vais partir avec la deuxième question qui est un peu plus technique. En fait, je n'ai pas bien compris les chiffres que le conférencier avait présentés sur la population qui était caractérisée comme étant à faible pouvoir d'achat ou faible revenu, qui étaient présentés comme des francophones. Et ce que je crois avoir noté, c'était autour de 61 000 personnes, si je ne me trompe pas. J'aimerais savoir si ces 61 000 personnes sont des francophones de Toronto. Ça, c'est d'abord un. Parce que sous ma main, ce que j'ai l'impression qu'il y a 10 fois moins de francophones, si je ne me trompe pas. Et j'aimerais aussi comprendre, quand il parle de faible revenu, quel est le niveau de revenu, le seuil de revenu qui est considéré ici dans les statistiques qu'ils ont menées, et si ces statistiques sont basées sur les personnes individuelles ou sur les revenus familiales, en fait. Dans le cas où tu as une famille de 2 personnes, est-ce que c'est les revenus qui sont pris en compte ou bien c'est les revenus totalement individuels? Et enfin, sur ces 61 000 personnes, si le chiffre est correct, quelle serait la répartition en fait, si on veut désagréger un peu pour mieux comprendre la proportion des nouveaux arrivants, la proportion des Noirs, des minorités visibles et la proportion des femmes, par exemple, dans ces 61 000 personnes, si c'est vraiment correct.
Thank you for the question. So to clarify, so low income is Statistics Canada concept and is roughly, well, it is defined as the 50% of the national median income. So this is quite low in terms of that many people would consider to be precarious. Roughly speaking, low income is roughly equivalent. So this is not an exact figure. I'm taking this from the top of my head, is roughly around $40,000 to $45,000 for a family of 4, or what they call a reference family of 4. So certainly that number does not capture what is often, what we often call sort of, the working poor, or folks who make a little bit more, but because due to the high cost of living in Toronto is still inadequate. But that's the Statistics Canada term. So you are correct. Based on that definition from the 2016 census, around 61,000 were identified as being in a condition of low income, which is the household income, and with knowledge of French. In terms of the specific demographic breakdown within that, we don't have that data right now. That would have to be a custom data request from Statistics Canada, which we would have to action.
Thank you.
Madame Leon, I'll go to a second round, but I just want to ask a few questions first. Let me start the timer. Monsieur Chu, can you just again, just so it's clear, the Toronto newcomer strategy, you mentioned that there's more to come on that. So what is the status of that? If we were to request a presentation today on that, when would be the best timing for that?
I certainly don't want to speak for my colleagues in the newcomer office. I think to effectively answer that question, I think that would have to be something that I would have to take back, but I recognize you might want to move a motion with that.
Okay, we can invite them and at their discretion, because if they have an update,
file, so
okay,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll look into that and invite them back. And then can you just speak to the 311 process and language and what you have access to through that? Because you've listed, some childcare, some shelters, there's some social assistance programs. So if you called 311 and you got the French operator, what type of services could you be connected with in that provided French language? Do they have a list of French language services? Like, how can people use 311 to navigate the system?
Well, I think in this case, we would be talking about community-based services. So 211 is probably your best bet, and they would have a very specific list. In terms of city services, they can receive service in French by calling 311, and there is a capacity for live interpretation through that. So any city service that you can access through 311. In terms of specific services, like in person, for example, or that would be dependent on the division providing the service, like I mentioned, you know, Toronto Employment and Social Service offices. There are specific designated offices. There are a list of childcare, French language childcare service providers, which is on the website, Toronto.ca website, which you can get access to that way, and the 311 call agent can help the caller navigate that.
Okay, and then just to reiterate again, I think you said that programs funded by the provincial government often have French language requirements as well. So correct. How is that monitored and how is that followed up on? And you know, do you have any examples of that?
Well, Toronto Employment Social Service offices would be an example of that, where as a provincially mandated service, they are required to offer. And so in that case, for example, they do have designated centers where French language services can be received.
Be an example of that. Okay, thank you. We can go to a deuxième question. Alors, Madame Léon, 5 minutes.
Merci. C'est une question plus générale. Y a-t-il dans tous vos services et à Toronto une communauté linguistique sur laquelle on pourrait, qui a beaucoup de succès et sur laquelle on pourrait s'inspirer d'une part et considérer comme un modèle?
That's a very interesting question. I would be remiss to try to answer that right now. I think that's something that we would have to follow up on. And we certainly can.
Okay, d'autres questions? Okay, Madame Gazibaro.
Merci. Ce n'est pas une question, c'est une suggestion que je voudrais faire au niveau, comme je parlais aussi de l'analyse différenciée selon les genres, est-ce que la ville de Toronto pourrait aussi introduire l'analyse différenciée en ce qui concerne les francophones, l'analyse différenciée selon les genres, et comme ça, quand on a une présentation des services, on a plus ou moins la dimension francophone qui est approprié plutôt que de parler en général, alors que nous sommes un comité de consultation pour les affaires francophones. Je trouve que ça pourrait rendre toutes nos questions qu'on a soulevées aujourd'hui adressées. Et s'il le faut, avoir beaucoup plus de consultations au niveau de la loi sur les services en français, comment est-ce qu'on peut concilier et impliquer l'analyse dans vos planifications et dans tous les leviers des services au niveau de la ville de Toronto. Juste une suggestion qui pourrait rendre facile nos questions.
I appreciate this.
D'accord. I think we have to pass that on to Mr. Tobin and see if there's a way forward for us to kind of get a better list of the programs. We're going to talk about the work plan later, and one of the things I want to recommend there is we have an invitation from the Provincial Ombudsman for French Language Services as well. And I met her recently. She's interested to give a presentation here so she can explain the services that she provides. And some of those do have impact on the municipal government where there are programs like Toronto Employment Services that they fund. So I think we can invite her, and that can be a way to kind of see what the watchdog is looking for in terms of our municipal services, and also give some direction for the city to start to develop that list. Est-ce qu'il y a-t-il des intervenants sur ce point? Are there any speakers on this item? Okay. Y a-t-il un proposeur pour accepter le point? Monsieur Charles, en faveur? Contre? Motion adoptée. Notre prochain article est AFA 7.2, événements artistiques et culturels soutenus par le Conseil des arts de Toronto. Timaj Garad, la gestionnaire du programme de sensibilisation et d'accès, et Andrew Suri, le directeur des subventions Conseil des arts de Toronto, sont avec nous pour faire une présentation. S'il vous plaît, allez-y avec votre présentation. Welcome, Timaj Gerard and Andrew Suri. Please go ahead with your presentation and introduce yourselves as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Suri. I'm the Director of Granting with Toronto Arts Council, and I'm joined today by my colleague Timaj Garad, who is our Outreach and Access Program Manager. It's our pleasure to be presenting to the Francophone Affairs Committee today. I will begin with a very brief introduction about TAC granting, and then I will turn it over to Timaj to provide some more information about Toronto Arts Council supported clients and cultural events which cater to Toronto's French-speaking community. Toronto Arts Council, if we could go to the first slide, thank you. Toronto Arts Council, since 1974, TAC has been mandated by the City of Toronto to support the city's arts community and offer grants programs funded by the city to a broad cross-section of Toronto arts organizations and professional artists. Grant programs are governed by two key operating principles: arm's length funding and peer review. Arm's length primarily refers to arm's length from the city, as TAC has, as an independent charity, has an independent board of directors, and peer review refers to decisions about funding being made by Toronto-based artists and cultural workers. Next slide, please. Toronto Arts Council does accept French language applications. When applications are submitted in French, assessment panels are still held in English, but we do have at least one assessor who is bilingual, and we also provide written translation of the application text. I'll add, when we have programs where the supporting artistic material is submitted in French, such as writers or playwrights programs, we'll have at least 3 French-speaking fluent peer assessors to provide the reviews on those applications. Thank you. Next slide, please. Last year, just as context for the scope of Toronto Arts Council granting, Toronto Arts Council processed 3,644 applications and awarded 1,844 grants total, with a total value of $23.4 million. One of the measures of our equity framework, which was adopted in 2017, is to track our language spoken at home by our individual applicants. And that's really to help inform our outreach to provide the best services to community. And you may be interested to know that over the past 3 years, Toronto Arts Council has received applications from people who speak 43 different non-English languages at home, ranging from Amharic and ASL to Yoruba and Zulu. Now, we have looked at the numbers and our granting statistics for French language spoken at home applicants. First, the application rate is about 1.9%, compared to the 2016 census data of 0.65% French language spoken at home. This is considerably higher for our application rate. We also looked at the success rate for French-speaking applicants who have identified in our voluntary self-identification form French language spoken at home. The success rate for those applicants is 27%, which is slightly higher than our overall success rate of 25%. This is the briefest introduction to Toronto Arts Council granting, but I would like to turn the presentation over now to my colleague, Timaj Garad, who will speak more about some of the clients TAC supports and some of the cultural events that cater to Toronto's Francophone community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. So I wanted to share some highlights of the projects and organizations that we support. But before I do that, I want to share a recent consultation that we did and some recommendations for Francophone received through this consultation. So in developing our new Black Arts program, supporting Black artists and arts organizations, we did a series of consultations with 300 Black artists and arts workers through focus groups and surveys. And what came out of those recommendations, specifically around Black Francophones and inclusion of Black Francophone communities, was better outreach to Black Francophone communities, and that there needs to be some more clarity around the fact that we do actually accept grants in both English and French, and also just ensuring representation of a French speaking panel. Some of the conversations and discussions that were happening through these consultation processes. And you can read the full report on our website, torontoartscouncil.org. The report is pictured here. It's called Black Arts Funding for Black Arts Future Recommendations for Toronto Arts Council. I want to highlight some TAC-funded Francophone organizations and projects. So some of the ways in which we're bringing arts programs and just animating the city, serving French-speaking communities in a variety of different arts disciplines. So we do have operating programs, which is core funding, as well as projects programs that we're going to be highlighting. So first I want our operating clients. So these are organizations that on an ongoing basis with core funding. So one of these examples is Le Laboratoire d'Art, and they are a visual and media arts operating client with TAC. They are Francophone Media Arts Center, and their vision is to really encourage the advancement of Francophone Ontarian media artists. And just to highlight some of the programming and the work that they're doing in the community, Le Labo has a number of different arts activations in the city, including French film screenings, collaboration with galleries, most recently Gallery 44, where they created mixed media art installations. And what you see here is an example of some of the recent mixed media arts works. This is a postcard that was created by an artist that was supported through this program. And so there are a lot of different activations that are happening through this funding with La Labo. And then there are a number of other operating organizations that and in a variety of different arts disciplines. So through our literary arts operating program, we support Salon de Livre de Toronto, and they are supporting Francophone literary artists, particularly Francophone authors, and selling their work and just amplifying French culture and literature across the city. What they are notably known for is their flagship book fair, where they have workshops, performances, panels, and readings centering French literature. They also have a number of other programs that really support books written in the French language, and as well as French authors. In our dance operating program, we have Bouchard Danse, which is a organization that supports dance artists. It was founded by choreographer and artistic director Sylvie Bouchard. And some of the programming that they've had recently was commissioned works with various choreographers as part of a series called Convergence of Arrivals, where they featured solos and duos by a number of different dance artists. And just basically, it was a narrative project where these dancers were able to sort of express their personal journeys through dance. And this is just an image of some of their programming that they've done. They do a number of different programming again throughout the year. In our theater operating program, we support Le Théâtre Français de Toronto, and some of the programming that they have is, of course, plays that they've also converted most recently into film. So, sorry about that. I think I lost. Can you? Sorry about that. So some recent project examples is a web series called Les Impériaux, and this is an online web series originally plays and in partnership with TFO, have converted into a film series, and as well as a couple of radio plays that they've done, and again, lots of different plays throughout the year. We also have our music projects programs. We support Francophone organizations and artists through various projects funded through TAC. And this is an example of a music project where we funded Francophone en fait to create a French music festival in the Distillery District, highlighting and amplifying Francophone musicians. And I did want to play a clip from this project so that you can kind of get a sense of what this looks like in action. So I'm just going to play a few seconds of this clip.
Thank you.
So that was an example of one of the acts that they had in their French Music Festival at the Distillery District. It's always best when listening and talking about music projects to also listen to the music. So I hope you enjoyed that. And another organization that we support, Alliance Française de Toronto, through our music projects program. Again, we've supported them to produce a French pop folk music concert series where they had a number of artists performing, as well as an artist talk series. So I do want to share a little bit of their last season where they show various different programming that they've done throughout that year. And again, okay, so that was a short montage of a few different projects, including some of the concert series that they've done, and this pop folk music concert was a part of that. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. Again, we support Francophone organizations across various disciplines, but I also want to say, you didn't see it here, but we also support lots of Francophone individual artists as well. So if you have any questions at this time, happy to answer those questions.
Merci, Madame Girard et Monsieur Suri. Membres, est-ce qu'il y a des questions pour les présentateurs? Si... Madame Léon? 5 minutes. We need you to unmute.
Je voulais tout simplement me retirer de cette partie de discussion parce que pour moi, j'ai un conflit d'intérêts et j'ai beaucoup de ressentiment par rapport au TAC qui n'a pas soutenu Ciné Franco depuis quelques années, malgré nos demandes, et j'ai beaucoup de ressentiment. Alors, je vais me retirer jusqu'à ce que nous passions disons, au point suivant. Merci.
Merci. We will look into this and follow back up with you as well. Thank you for that. Are there other speakers on this item or questions on this item? Madame Gazibaro?
Je pense que M. Serge avait levé la main avant moi. Bah. Vas-y.
Très rapidement, alors, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Même si on connaît effectivement tous ces programmes parce qu'on les utilise beaucoup et on est très content qu'ils existent, est-ce qu'il y a un nombre de programmes supplémentaires qui vont être financés? Est-ce qu'il y a un quota de programmes financés? Comment ça se passe au niveau de ce financement pour les programmes francophones?
I can respond to that if that's okay. Toronto Arts Council has certain targeted programs that are guided by our equity framework and our equity priority groups. For many years now, the Arts Council has acknowledged that there are quite a few, there's a great number of historically disadvantaged groups that confront barriers to full participation in Canadian society and in the arts sector. And so to address the most underserved communities, we have designated equity priority groups at the Toronto Arts Council, which have been approved by our board of directors. And they are currently, the priority groups are Black is one, persons of color, deaf persons, persons with disabilities, and persons living with mental illness, Indigenous people, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and 2SL LGBTQIAP people, or Two-Spirit, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex, asexual, and pansexual people. That said, we do have some targeted programs. For example, we have a TAC accessibility grant for people who are deaf or have disabilities. We have an Indigenous Arts Projects program. We now have a Black Arts program, which has both project and operating components. And a number of years ago, I believe it was in 2016, we launched a newcomer and refugee artist mentorship program, which is specifically to support newcomer artists to Toronto who have been here for 7 years or less. We have not to date created a program specific for Francophone artists or Francophone organizations, but we are glad to be able to support Francophone artists and organizations through all of our granting programs, for that matter, which include programs for individuals in all disciplines, project programs for organizations and collectives, operating grants, as well as strategic granting programs. I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to elaborate further if there's a follow-up.
I'd like to also share that this is just a highlight of some of the ones that we thought, some of the organizations and projects and programs we thought we would share today with our limited time, but there are many more that we support that we just did not have the time to highlight in today's presentation.
Okay. Monsieur Paul, autre question? Madame Gazibaro, and apologies, I only get 5 people at a time on my screen on the side, so sometimes I don't see you, so that's why I don't always go in the right order, hands go up. Madame Gazibaro, 5 minutes.
Mon nom, c'est Gassi Rabo. Pour les prochaines, vous inversez un peu la prononciation de mon nom. Merci. Gassi Rabo.
Oh,
Est-ce que
apologies.
ça va? Merci. Et moi, merci de nous présenter les activités que vous avez quand même soutenues. En abondant dans le même sens que Serge Paul, j'aimerais attirer l'attention sur les groupes francophones qui sont un peu laissés de côté, comme les jeunes et les femmes. Je pense que la façon dont c'est fait, c'est que les individus en soi qui aimeraient avancer au niveau de l'art ne savent pas ou ne comprennent même pas comment arriver jusqu'à trouver du soutien au niveau de la ville de Toronto. D'un autre côté, nous n'avons pas de quartier francophone bien précisé dans la ville de Toronto. Nos communautés sont un tout petit peu éparpillées. Nous connaissons aussi dans notre communauté la question d'une jeunesse aussi qui fait face aux problèmes de racisme et aux problèmes de justice. Souvent parce que et les parents et les jeunes, et souvent les parents, les mamans, qui sont des familles monoparentales, ne recevront jamais cette information sur comment développer l'aspect artistique. D'autre part, l'aspect artistique au niveau des jeunes est un enjeu qui peut aussi enrayer la criminalité, enrayer l'oisiveté et essayer de rassembler aussi les communautés. Et quand on parle des communautés francophones, c'est des communautés. On n'a pas une communauté. Il y a plusieurs diversités au sein de la diversité francophone. Comment est-ce que la ville de Toronto peut vraiment promouvoir l'accès, encore une fois, à ce soutien artistique pour qu'on puisse mettre même à l'œuvre les jeunes artistes, les femmes artistes, pour faire, parce que quand on parle de francophonie en fait, ou des groupes, on a vu, c'est des groupes constitués depuis un certain temps. Et quand on parle des nouveaux arrivants, des nouveaux groupes d'immigrants, je pense qu'il faudrait aussi faire un peu de promotion pour encourager que ce soit les artistes solos. Et puis l'art, c'est pas seulement la musique, ça peut être aussi l'écrit, ça peut être l'art plastique, ça peut être n'importe quel art. On entend quand on pense surtout à l'art, il y a des personnes qui ne s'arrêtent que à la musique, mais il y a beaucoup d'art expressif aussi. Comment est-ce qu'on peut promouvoir, même nous sommes des représentantes d'une grande communauté, mais je ne savais même pas que francophonie, en fait, est soutenue par la ville de Toronto. Je viens de l'apprendre. C'est aussi l'information. Comment est-ce qu'on peut faire passer l'information? Je vois ici Serge Paul travaille avec les écoles et je pense que l'école pourrait être un moyen peut-être d'organiser ne fût-ce qu'un concours une fois par an pour essayer de sortir les jeunes artistes, les jeunes qui ont du talent, jeunes filles, jeunes garçons, pour justement leur faire participer comme francophones à l'art aussi diversifié.
Thank you so much for that. I'm really happy that we're having this discussion, and it's an important one to have because there is a need for greater outreach to the Francophone community. And that's something, again, greater outreach to underserved communities is a part of our approach to outreach. And so that is something that I'll keep in mind in terms of your comments. So I appreciate your feedback.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Okay. Anyone to speak on this item? OK. Y a-t-il un proposeur? OK. Madame Bolland? Okay. Madame Leon, to note the objection, we will do a recorded vote.
So members, on the motion to receive the item, when I call your name, if you could please state if you are in favor or if you are opposed. Lise Bélan.
In favor.
In favor. Merci. Or you can say pour ou contre. Merci. Carlo Handy Charles.
Pour.
Dada Gazirabo. Madame Gazirabo, est-ce que vous pouvez enregistrer votre vote, s'il vous plaît?
Pour, je m'excuse.
Merci. Madame Isabelle Girard.
Pour.
Merci. Youssouf Kalogo.
Pour.
Marceline. Absente. Dominique Mayou.
Pour.
La conseillère Jennifer McKelvey.
Pour.
Et Serge Paul.
Pour.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Les votes sont 8 pour avec une absence. Alors, c'est à l'unanimité que la motion passe.
Merci. Notre prochain article est FA 7.3, le plan de travail de 2019 à 2022 du Comité consultatif sur les affaires francophones. Cet article a été inscrit comme point permanent à l'ordre du jour par Tobin, le directeur service des arts et de la culture, division du développement économique et de culture, et ici pour nous présenter le plan de travail actuel. Bienvenue, Monsieur Tobin. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente. Bonjour, membres du comité. Thank you very much for the invitation to join. As a standing item on the committee's agenda, we take a look at the work plan to determine what will be priorities for the remainder of the term. You will have seen that a number of items were updated with the request for understanding for support to Francophone culture, as well as elements relating to the provision of services to the Francophone community. Understand that further to the chair's comments, we'll be looking at adding an item with respect to the newcomer office or program inventory. So I'll await that direction. The other thing that I'd like to table is in March of 2019, Council adopted a motion that would have all Council advisory boards or CABs, such as this committee, prepare interim and end of term reports to be submitted to the standing committee to which that CAB is related. So I would like to table that as an additional item for the work plan, that a final report, while the interim reports were not carried out in any of the CABs due to COVID, a final report towards the end of Council's term in 2022 to the Economic and Community Development Committee should be useful. And I think we could table that, if you agree, Chair, for discussion at the committee's next meeting, to take in the committee members' advice as well about how the committee functioned, and any advice with respect to changes for future council terms.
OK. Merci, Monsieur Tobin. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions pour Monsieur Tobin? Y a-t-il des intervenants sur ce point? Monsieur Calugo.
Oui, c'est juste une question de clarification. Si j'ai bien compris, Monsieur le directeur disait que c'est un seul rapport qui sera préparé, le rapport en fin de mandat. OK.
À la présidente, oui, c'est exactement ça. Il y avait l'intention, suite à la direction du Conseil, d'avoir deux rapports, mais un rapport intérim n'était pas préparé par aucun comité cette terme-ci. Alors, ça reste la responsabilité de préparer un rapport pour la fin du terme en 2022.
Autre question? OK, j'ai une motion. Okay, this is just to amend the work plan so we can ask for a presentation from the Toronto Newcomer Strategy. We'll leave that to Monsieur Tobin to decide on the best timing for that, given that there may be an update coming soon. Also, not amending into the work plan, but I will be sending an invitation to the Provincial Ombudsman for French Language Services to invite her to give a presentation, and then we can know what her mandate is, and maybe just I'll give direction, since he's here, to Monsieur Tobin, to start to, maybe we can consolidate what that list of services are that we provide, and we are required to provide in French as well. A good example of that is the Toronto Employment Services that, it wasn't listed in the presentation we received today, and we heard that in the questions. So clearly there are some other services that are provided, and we need to kind of work on a list of that that could be provided. Are there any questions of the mover of my motion? Okay, seeing none, are there any other questions or speakers on this item? Okay, so seeing none, we can move to vote on the motion. Do you need to display? Okay, on the motion, en faveur, contre, motion adoptée. Votons sur le point modifié. En faveur? Okay. Contre, adopté. That comes to the end of the agenda. Merci à tous de votre participation. La réunion est levée.
Merci.
Bonne journée à vous tous et à toutes. Au revoir.
Au revoir à vous.
Au revoir, bonne journée.
Au revoir.
Merci.